Hello. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but just barely.
Okay.
Wait a minute, let me turn up my volume. Go ahead.
I'm talking now. Is that any better? You see where my microphone is.
Yeah,
I just put the microphone in the wrong position.
I do that. Yeah.
Okay, there. Better now?
Okay. Uh, yeah, there's some static there. Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so we'll officially start now. We'll erase all the beginning
Uh,
part.
no,
Good
I'm not
morning.
hearing you. I can't hear you clearly. There's a lot of buzz around it.
Any better now?
That's better. Yes.
Okay, now we're going to officially start. I'm happy this morning to interview somebody who I just met in the last few weeks, and he is the son of a very famous film composer, and he has followed in his father's traditions, but gone in other ways too. Good, good morning, Dennis.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
So tell me what was, you grew up not in California, but you grew up in New York City in the Upper West Side, correct?
Yes, that's where I started.
And your father at that point was writing pop songs. That was his whole ambition, was to write pop songs.
Yes, from as far as I can tell, from the cradle on. No, but that was always his interest and passion and focus too, even to the exclusion of other kinds of popular music.
So
But
he never went to a Broadway show. So if I was,
I, he may have before I was born and gone
they
to some
certainly
of
didn't
the
talk about it. You got to see My Fair Lady, or you got to see The King and I. And
yeah.
did he not
It's
have? Were there any Broadway cast albums in your house?
in our no.
No.
We did have uh, a record player in which I still recall hearing now we're back in the 40s. Uh, those the smaller record, what were those called? In any case, we put on a Spike Jones album, and I just had so much fun with that stuff. If people remember him as one of the great comics of musical band leading, and and he parodied some classical music in his stuff too, which first introduced me to things like the Nutcracker Suite and
But
others.
was
But
his first hit Mares y Dotes?
yeah, my dad's first, well, that came along later. I mean, if you want to do this in terms of how he got, first of all, just brief correction. When you said he was a film composer, literally, yes, but not what people think. He didn't write the background music that we all hear in films. He wrote the theme songs that might introduce the film and more thoroughly for TV shows. But we can get to these things. I don't know if we just want to skip around his career and
With Cinderella, let's start with your Walt Disney. Actually, I'm impressed with this. Walt Disney came to New York looking for a composer, and he had heard Mares y Dotes. And he thought
right.
that would be a fun kind of approach to Cinderella. Is that
Uh,
correct?
yes, well, you heard that, but what he was hearing when he came to New York, this now we're in the late 40s, and he knew he wanted to make an animation out of that um, that story. And what was in the air a lot was another kind of novelty tune, as they called them. Merzidos is the most, maybe the most famous example of that genre, but something called Chababa Chababa Chababa, which was another play on word words in this case, imitation Italian, right? And it was a song about a mother putting her kid to bed. Chababa Chababa Chababa, the
This
Goomba.
was a top 10 song then, the play?
You go to
Who,
sleep already,
who,
and
who sang this song? Who made the recording of that?
I think then I looked this up, wasn't it? I think Perry Como was the first
Okay.
well-known male singer at the time, and I know. So I mean, this is the story that Dad told me. I mean, God knows what other manipulations were going on behind the scene, but that song attracted him. You know, he knew that about marriage. You know, he knew that the guys who wrote that, and my dad, and he always had one or two lyric partners for the words. He was basically the tunesmith, and we heard that. And he thought, well, that's going to fit the kind of antics that go on from, you know, with the animal, the mice and the birds and everything in Cinderella. And they knew they could write ballads too, which would also be important in that movie.
But you
And
were
so
you were
I guess,
a little unhappy that it meant that you and your mother would have to leave New York and spend how long in California?
oh yeah, how terrible. Uh,
Well, you
that
didn't want if they'd ask you, David, do
that
you want to go to California and leave your friends? You said yes, I
uh,
do.
so, no, I didn't have any choice.
Mm. Did you
And
know how long it was going to be? Did he say it'll be a few months or a year? Or
Oh, he must have said it'll be about a year. It was about a year, and I mean, it's you know, it takes a lot of time for them to do these
they
things and
start
to
with the
probably
songs first, so that they have to
do
get
the song
they have to
and then
get
the animation.
singers and
That's right.
animation and
The animation has to match the characters' mouths
like
singing the song.
maybe two
But
years from the beginning to the final product.
well, I don't know. Yes, maybe when they were done with that, there was all sorts of other editing and stuff to do. I wanted to say they also had a major role in finding the voice who would be Cinderella. Uh, and it's a young woman at the time, singer of the time. They liked it. She sang some of the songs. They may have made a some kind of recording for him and for Disney. And he said, "This is my Cinderella." Her name was Eileen Woods, and we should remember that she had a great voice in the movie, but you know, did not become famous afterwards. As far as I know, other than that. So that was a big favor for him. So yeah, see, I think what he said is, you know, well, in fact, you know, I was very young then, and I wasn't paying attention as you know to your parents and what they're up to. They said, "Well, we are going to resettle in California for this project, and then we'll come
So
back to New York."
Mac David too. Mac David,
Yeah, so
major
his
major.
well, they all had to do that. Yeah, Mac David, which was also his best friend, he was the best man at his wedding, and
And is this
his
not Hal David's brother?
he was Hal David. Yes, very good. You passed the test. Hal David's brother. It's funny. He had two lyricists who had very famous brothers in songwriting. That was one, and the other one I'll catch the name soon. And his third partner in this, another lyric writer, Al Hoffman, who was a funny guy and clever with words. So they schlepped out to L.A. and as far as I recall, they were renting houses. They showed it was not going to be permanent. And I believe my dad got a house that was supposed to be formerly owned by the brother of Al Jolson, something like that. But I didn't know any of these names and didn't care anyway. But it was a
But it was
nice large
certainly
house.
grander than your apartment, right?
And yes, leaving an apartment in New York.
Did you have a
Uh,
swimming pool?
did we? It's likely, but I don't recall that. I know it was large enough to have parties, which they like to do there with other other people who were starting to move to LA from New York too. Uh, and but no, we came back. But that taste of LA, the warmth, and you can say, it's nice not to have snow and other things. And I hate to say it, but they felt that their New York neighborhood in that period was deteriorating. But what they were trying to say was the Puerto Ricans were moving in, and there was a prejudice there involved too. So they thought, and in any case, the music industry was moving from New York, specifically the Brill Building, which we can talk about in a minute, out to LA. Of course, eventually Nashville and other places. It's diversified by now. But it had been centered in the city and then centered in one building in the city. But that's where they all went. And he came back to New York for another year or two, and then around 52, he decided, I assume with mom, that they should leave New York permanently, because he really wanted to get into writing these theme songs, as I said, for the burgeoning industry of TV that was spreading rapidly around the country, and there was a big market there. And so he had entered that, and also, so he wrote theme songs for, the most famous one is 77 Sunset Strip, right? Snap, snap. You remember that tune? And
Did he need a lyricist for that, or he just
no,
happened?
he always needed a lyricist. Yes, he needed a lyricist.
Is there any more to it than somebody saying 77 Sunset Strip? I don't recall talking about sunset or anything.
Well, that was a theme song. I mean, it's a very simple, it's a very simple tune, and almost no lyrics except 77 on that strip. And they talk, and I think the lyrics go on, it's a place on, Sunset Boulevard, where people conglomerate.
Okay, so there's a little more to
And
it. So does he
yeah,
get
there
his
was more
Mac?
to it than just
Is
the
his
title.
Mac lyric? Mac David
Was
lyric?
Mac, yes, I think so. I'd have to look that up, but it's likely he was oh, part of the team
That's me.
that did
I
that, because
love the robocalls.
yeah, that's right. Me too. And
What percentage of your calls are robocalls? I'd say mine are like 80%.
and I right, since this phone, even we use landlines, and at least I do, and then sometimes ourselves. But this kid tells you who's calling if it's set up at the other end that way.
When you don't see it,
So they
sometimes it
reveal.
says
When I know
robocall.
by now, I'm sort of friendly with the initials. I just got this call, TN, which I guess is Tennessee, has been calling for a robo guy, has been calling frequently over the last few weeks. I wish we had a button that could eliminate them. But in any case, he got into TV shows, and he also wrote a lot of theme songs for westerns and detective shows that were popular at the time for Warner Brothers. They had a whole stream of them. Uh, and
Did
let's
he
see,
have an
my
agent?
memory.
Did he have an agent that got him different gigs, or
Oh,
did
I
people come
don't
to him?
remember talk of anything like that. No, by the early, he had made his mark by the late, well, by the late 30s, in as a really fine uh, composer of pop songs. So he didn't really have to. Everybody knew who he was, and his partners. So it was just a matter of, here we are, we're available, and this is what we want to do. And so they wrote those things. I mean, some of the others were Hawaiian I remember, as a detective show, that Hawaiian Eye, and throbbing drums in the background. And what was some of they'll ever occur to me. I'd have to check my charts of what he wrote, but he got into that, and he managed. I mean, I don't know. Again, I wasn't paying attention until much later, to make deals with some of and his partner. Mac David was the real, I think, deal maker of the trio, and they got a contract when Martin and Lewis, remember them, uh, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, who was again another very famous singer of the time, part of the Rat Pack. And they were a team, barely. In person, they really didn't care for each other, but together they
I
were
think in
very
the
fun.
beginning, it just got worse. I think in the
Yeah, yeah,
beginning,
was
they said they
it?
tolerated each other.
That, okay, I wasn't going to say it right. Barely, yeah. And, and think so.
Were you impressed with Martin and Lewis? Did you say that's a good gig for you, Dad?
Well, they started. They saw there was a market for them in teaming up, not just on stage and in Vegas for their act. They had an act, and on TV, but for movies. And so there were a whole series of these. Let me see, what am I doing? I am looking for a photo here that you'll like. Yes, so let me give the build
How
up to
many
this.
songs do you think there were that they wrote for Martin and Lewis in the movie?
How many songs? I mean, for those guys?
Yeah, well, just in that movie at War with the Army, because I remember going to the
Well,
Comet
each
Theater in Milwaukee,
they
down the
made.
street from my grandfather.
Yeah. Which one?
The Comet Theater, no one knows this, but
Oh yeah, the
it
comedy.
was within 2 blocks of my grandfather, and I knew Martin and Lewis from TV, and I thought, oh, I think I remember liking the songs. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there were some very clever ones, and of course, every movie with Dean Martin had to have a ballad for him to sing to the woman. Would be his catch of the movie, and uh, and they would kid each other a lot on the screen as part of the script. Uh, the one song that I always remembered actually is in I thought it was one of their best films as a team. Of course, Jerry Lewis had many great movies of his own on his own when they split up. But was a movie called At War with the Army, already a clever title. And I don't know if you remember that one, but there's a scene, yeah, in which Jerry Lewis is in the sort of, I guess, the canteen or the kitchen of this army base, in which nothing much happens except a lot of fooling around, and um and he sings this song called let's see, the Navy gets the gravy, but the Army gets the beans. I remember that one. So
Hey, that
already
was a
going
pop
back,
song. I remember that song on the radio.
yes, the Army, and what he does is massacre on purpose as he's trying to, make a pot of food or beans or something to feed the guys. And of course, chaos breaks out. That's his style. And and he's struggling with this and struggling with that. And he's singing this song at the same time. And it's a very funny couple of minutes of getting the song across. And now for the pleasure of your but this was the actually became my parents' acquaintances with Jerry Lewis and his family. Married at the time his first wife Patty Lewis, and they had some children, and they would hold parties. And But here's a still, not from the movie, but from those two, and my dad and Mac David sort of acting out something. I'll try to hold, see if you can see it, and is that coming through?
Yes, sure. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's kind of cute of them, and a lot of others. They would. I'm sorry to say, Lewis would have parties. They would go to them, and I would come along. Nothing better to do. So this would be when I was an early teenager. I had no relation. I had no idea who I was. Who was surrounding me, uh, and usually I would know. I remember in one guy could see that at one of the parties. He put me in. He said, "Come with me." He put me in a room, put earphones on my head, and I could listen to classical music, which is what I wanted to do. And so, but they also became friends with Tony Curtis and his wife Janet Leigh, and that was more glamorous too. She was a lovely person as well as a film star, and autographed a couple of
And
her
did the whole
movie
family,
headshots.
did the whole Livingston family go to the movies a lot once you're in Hollywood? Even the
Did
things
we
that weren't.
again? Uh, I don't recall that. We certainly would have gone to the premiere of Cinderella and other movies. In New York, I would go frequently to the movies, but taken by my grandfather, on my dad's father. He moved his parents, who were still alive, from where he grew up in Denver, and that's a whole nother story, to New York. And
Did your grandfather have any
my
music?
grandfather, he liked to take me down. I'm sorry, what?
Did he do anything in music, your grandfather?
Yes. Well, if you want, we'll hold that thought. And Grandpa Sam took me to Times Square, which now we're back into the mid late 40s, which was, not what it is now. Lots of lights, but kind of rough area. And but they had movie houses, and there I would go see those. Oh, you know how it was then. You would see two features and a newsreel. Does anybody know those? That's how you got, no internet then. You'd watch the news at the theater, and
Did
sometimes in
you
a
have to go to
cartoon short.
42nd Street? Did you go to
Yeah,
42nd Street? Because I think
yeah.
that's
Well,
where
that
they
that's
gave you the two movies on
yeah,
Broadway. I don't think they gave you two movies. They gave you one movie.
that's right. Well, there would be. That's right. That's the area, 40 around 42nd, and I also have very vivid memories. I mean, I don't have really great memories of my growing up period. That's just how it was. I was inside my head all the time, and but he or grandpa took me to, I mean, this is irrelevant to dad's music career, but to a flea circus. Now there was a famous
On
um
42nd, I
kind
think
of,
it's on 42nd Street. It's somebody's
you
flea
remember there was,
circus.
and it was part of a larger, display of these kind of crazy acts. And I still remember this. I remember you had a big magnifying glass that they provided. You could look at the table, and by God, there were fleas pulling little wagons. I know that stayed forever. That should have been a song of some kind. So that was that. But so yeah, Dad made his bones in New York, you might say, and took those bones with him to LA, and that carried him forward. He was still writing pop music too into the 50s. Uh,
You have any idea his total number of songs? Your
Total
ballpark?
number. It could be hundreds. I mean, as we've talked before, he saw himself basically as and he used this phrase, a journeyman songwriter. I mean, he loved music, he loved it, but this was a job, and you had to go to work every day and do your job, and ideally a song a day. I mean, in those
So
times, there
you,
were people
he
who could
needed
do
to
that.
go to the studio. He couldn't just stay at home and
Well, he would both. He didn't have what he had in. Okay, so now we're back to the Brill building. I don't know who Brill was, but he got this Art Deco structure. It's still there. Very nice to look at. Gold leaf on the opening, title.
are there any music publishers there?
And they were all the publishers were there in those
I mean,
days.
today, are
That's why.
there any of those guys still around? Have they all moved or died?
Well, that of course everything has changed. There probably are still some, but as I said, the music industry is dispersed around the country. But it was very handy to have it, in such a concentration. Of course, it starts there in Tin Pan Alley, the famous, and it
Couldn't
was
you
an
go to
alley.
one publisher? Couldn't you have a song and you play it for one publisher and he said, "Oh, I don't know," and you could go down the hall or up a
This is
flight?
exactly what they did. Yeah, you got it. They would take the songs from floor to floor. You'll see anybody, any interest here? And, or else the publisher knew they were coming and was, again, it gets we're back in the early 30s is when he moved to New York, and so he wasn't known yet. He was just beginning his career, and so with his partners, and so yes, they would do that. But it was also a handy place for singers to go. I mean, it was very convenient to go find music that they wanted to sing. And in fact, his first hit came from that process. And damn, I wish I remembered the woman singer, well known at the time, who picked up, I think it was "My Window Looks Over the South." That was one of his songs. And I think she was from the South, and she liked that. And it's a nice ballad and of nostalgia. Many of these guys wrote about the South and never went there. Of course, there was
Swanee, George Gershwin didn't know
Swanee,
anything
yeah,
about the
right.
Swanee.
Or they would write about foreign countries. You know, it had nothing to do with. They were all stereotypes.
Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Of course, this is yeah, indeed, and but this paid off in the long run because that's how he met my mother, who came to the Brill. They always called it the Brill. With okay, here's another absolute, along with buggy whip makers, another absolute profession is the song plugger. I don't believe there are such people around now. It's agents and people do that, but there was a profession of guy. I think they were all guys who
I
would
think they would
take,
go to record shops and
yes,
they
record
would
shop,
sing to say, "This is a new record by Perry Como."
right. Well, that too, but their main, source of their source of income was to go take a singer that they thought had a chance if they weren't yet known and or had just begun their careers and go to the Brill to look for music. And I'll just say the origin story of why I'm here is apparently this song plugger was taking my mom, Ruth Schwartz at the time, up the elevator, and they got off at the floor. My dad was waiting for the elevator to go down. They locked eyes, and the rest is history. And apparently, they got to know each other very well and became such an item that uh, here's another name from the Jurassic era. Uh, Walter Winchell, who's a great gossip
So it was
columnist
in
of
the
the
gossip
time.
column. Maisie Dote's
Yes.
composer dates.
Oh, you found that? Yes.
Oh,
Did
no,
you?
no, no.
Uh,
I'm guessing,
well,
but
you
it
just
could have
made it
been.
up. Well, that's exactly. Yeah, and it said yes. Now dating singer Ruth. Or she used a stage name, Brent, and
How many
that
recordings
sounded.
did she make?
How many? Okay, wait a minute. Not that kind. She was not. Unfortunately, no, she
So
wasn't
no,
that.
no
She could
one,
have been,
even
but
your
she had.
father didn't say, "I want to make a record with you."
Okay, hold that thought too. And well, we never got back to Sam. Well, we will later. As to how Dad got his music inspiration, it's she was a singer with big bands, and that was a whole genre in itself. Into the 30s, we're talking, and as you know, and and there was this phenomenon of all girl bands, that's what they call them, and so she was part of that tribe of several like that. And of course, the directors were and producers were men, but she was very good at that. They would play their piece, and it would be a song of the time, and then she would sing it along with the rest of the band. So that was how she started. And no, Dad, they never hooked up as a team, is what you're implying of two musicians. He just had
But did
some
the
kind of
band she
prejudice,
sang with?
some kind
Did
of
she not
prejudice.
sing? Did she
The
not
what?
sing with the band on a recording?
Did she watch him get
Now, did
in
she
his
sing with
recording?
her band? Make a recording of
Oh, was
something?
the band made recordings? Boy, not that I know of. I wish I remembered the name of the one band that became well known, but it'll pop up. But it's and she did appear on radio, which was another important avenue of uh, becoming known, and would sing a few songs, and you'd have a little interview, and but I have searched far and wide on the net where everything is to see if the stations. I've never found a recording of her that way, and nobody apparently who taped these at home, or like you did at musicals, on the spot. So alas, her voice is lost to me that
Growing up,
way.
would she sing around the house? Would you hear her singing, sort of a
Yeah,
cappella?
now you're digging into family psychology here, but I'll just say they're a very loving couple, but their social contract, as far as I could tell, was basically there's only one star in the house, and,
Uh,
and the deal was she gets married, she drops any singing career she wanted, and my sense of it is that she was fine with that, and would basically whatever wifely duties were then. And later on in life, she did volunteer work at local hospitals, and that was important. But uh, she never really had a singing career in the way you're getting at, which is too bad, because there, even at that time, there were some women who did carry on in their careers after they were married, but that wasn't the scene. I mean, I think she was glad to marry my dad just to get out of the world of touring with these big bands and trying to keep guys off that get their hands off and all the things that women went through, uh, and to have more security in life, which
So how long after you met him did they get married?
or for life, how until
You
the
know,
end.
when how long from that elevator to walking down the aisle or going to City Hall, or
What did you ask?
how long did it take from the elevator meeting at the Brill Building
Oh, the elevator.
to getting married?
I don't know, but my impression is not long. He would joke, and Mom would joke later because she knew about this, that he may have had a girlfriend at the time or shortly before, who had a I don't know her name. I've often been curious about this, but her stage name was Bubbles. She may have worked in strip joints or something. But, but Dad was a very handsome guy, and the women did flock to him, and I'm sure he took advantage throughout his life. Let me see. Well, you can see here's an early. Okay, this is when he started a big band named after in the late 30s. He started a big band and called the one of his hits is the Talk of the Town, which is I believe still remembered. It's a great ballad. And people stop and stare because for me it's kind of unusual for its time because it's a song about a breakup of a couple. There weren't, I don't think there were many of those in the 20s and 30s. There are a lot more now. But that's, it's the talk of the town that this couple who was in the song was supposed to get married, called it off. And people, I wish I could remember the words better, but that's what people are stopping and staring at. What? You're not getting married? But so he named he had the ambition of starting, like everybody was doing, a big band in the mid 30s. And here's his what would you call sort of a headshot, and you can see what a good looker. There he is, the talk of the town band. So what a guy. And oh yeah, here I've got something. Let me just finish this thought. He had that band, and no, he didn't invite my mom Ruth to sing with that band either. But they did record a lot. They traveled a lot. No, they didn't record, but he was a touring band, and I just got pretty successful at that. But that career ended when I was born, and I think he was on the road. And Mom, in those days, there was no Twitter. You sent a telegram, and it was basically time to come home. And he got the message, to help with the new kid and other things, and she missed him, so he did. And the band called, but he for a good 6 or 7 years he was doing well as a big band leader. And I also have a photo here just to snap back to the Disney days, so you can see how God they're all so young and ambitious. And I look at this, Dad standing up on one side, Mac David on the other, and Al Hoffman at the desk. And I'm almost certain this is at an office they may have worked in at Disney. But again, they look very pleased with themselves. Okay, and as they should. But that was good. In later years, when became more of I had a collecting edge to me. As you can see around all these books I now collect from about science fiction and fantasy novels I love reading. And I asked Dad, collecting, why didn't you ever get an autograph from Disney? Better yet, on one of his cells. Those things are worth a
the
fortune now.
cells, the
Yeah.
individual cell.
Did you have a Cinderella cell? Would it kill you? I mean, there are these things lying all around, but that wasn't his mindset. And it wasn't mine either till I was an adult and realized who he was consorting with. But he did get those autographs from Janet Leigh, which she's sort of laying on a couch, in a bathing suit. Wow, that was just right for a teenage boy to look at. So so there was, his career is pretty much a continuous path from the time he left Denver to go to New York. And the reason he did that, he was playing. I just want to say he was playing in band. He was a very good pianist, even as a teenager, and he was playing in bands from his 15, 16-year-old on. And for example, I have lots of shots of those, but this is a cute one. And then I'll read you there's a signature at the bottom. So this was a band. Now we're in the late, let me see. He's born in 2019. No, this would have to be also, when would he be a teenager? 20s, late? No, not 10. He would just be 10. That would be precocious. It must have been the early 30s before he left town. But in any case, when he was very young, and I think he started this band and he called them the Snappy Seven. Count them. And he's the guy, he's this guy in there in the Snappy Seven, and they are snappy, aren't they? In their suits and their instruments. No piano, but that accordion down there, I never knew till I saw these early photos that he also played accordion. And this carries through some of the early photos of him in the bands he played in. So we have to say one of the band he was in the early 30s, sort of, they were touring around and they had, I think they were heading for Columbus, Ohio, or someplace in Ohio, and the event was canceled. And the band said, well, what do we do now? They kind of broke up and they all went different ways. And as my dad always put it, and this is so apocryphal, who knows? He flipped a coin. Do I go back to the girlfriend in Denver or do I go to New York? And New York won, or Mersey Oats and me wouldn't be here. and
Is
I
there a
think he,
story how Mersey Notes was made?
oh, how it was made. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, I'll just wrap this up. With $9 in his pocket, that was always $9 it was. And he went so he got a job right away playing piano across the street, as it happened, from the Brill in a Chinese restaurant. And I've often looked there's something about it on the internet. I guess it was well known in those days. Many restaurants, believe it, I know you know this, had live music. I mean, it wasn't an act; it was just part of the restaurant. And they'd often have a pianist or maybe a small band. And so Dad was the house pianist for this place, and at least so he got some income that way. And
Did he get
so
free
his career
Chinese
took
food?
off.
Did he get free
Yeah,
Chinese food in addition to a small pay in
and
tips?
probably got a free lunch, I hope, whatever we were. And and so let's see. So and just back to Grandpa Sam, but where did this come from? How do you decide? Well, his father also wanted to be a songwriter, and that's very interesting to me. And went through the same kind of trip to Mecca, shall we say, when he was also young, and he had this ambition. I would say probably not as much talent as his son, but he did with a lyric writer. I don't know. Sorry, write some songs together. And I'm really so glad that there was sheet music of 3 or 4 of those that lasted, that were passed down to Dad, and kept them through all these years. And So Sam picked up as
Did
Sam is
Sam write music
19.
and lyrics?
No, just music seems to be that's the family trade, and went to New York with a no, he wasn't with a partner yet. He just went to New York to get out of Denver, I think, and to see what was happening. Wait, all right. See, if I need some water, I may disappear a second. You can glance at the spines of the books. It's and Sam, this is a great story, and how much it's sort of our origin story, my origin story, and as it turned out, because Sam ended up playing. He was a good singer too, and so he ended up being one of those guys. Now in New York at the time, this is very early in the history of cinema. They would have places called Nickelodeons, and they would turn the reels. You would see a silent movie of some kind, and in between changing reels, they would have an act. And so Sam got in as the singer, and he was billed as I told you in our last talk, as a silver voiced tenor from the Golden West. I don't know who came up with that one, but it's a nice moniker. And apparently it's in one of those sessions being put on that my grandmother showed up. She wasn't yet in the audience, and they apparently hit it off to the degree that somewhere along the line she became pregnant with Dad. And when he told his father, when Sam told his father back in Denver, so there's a long line of Jewish people who went to Denver because of they needed to get better air to cure them of pneumonia and stuff. So that's where it was. That's why he was born in Denver, and 2 generations at least. And so Sam's father said, basically recalled him, you get right back here with your bride to be back to Denver, and Sam complied, and that ended his singing career. And then he went on to become a salesman in various capacities, but never picked it up again. But I can't help but wonder, it's almost like a Greek myth, right? The son, Jerry, also at a young age, decides to leave Denver, literally leave Ohio, but he might have gone back home to pack up, to go to New York and see what he could do as a songwriter. And in this case, he does very well. So it's an interesting kind of Freudian thing of the son.
So your father never had to do anything other than songwrite. He didn't.
Did he ever? No. He. I know that during the war, he wasn't drafted, and there were various laws why that he got out, but he did work, and I think my mom did too, as many did in factories of some kind. But no, he had no other skills. He didn't need. He was lucky enough not to need any other skills. He was just very great at adapting the tune to the lyrics. People always ask what comes first, and the answer is both. I mean, sometimes one of his buddies would come with words, and he would find a tune to it, or vice versa. So you asked, so
Were they usually together in the room?
Yeah, well, at some point they would get together in one of these offices at the Brill, or maybe in their homes after this, especially when, as I say, the tribe basically moved to LA. And so composers were all around, lyricists, songwriters, for the same reason. That's where the money was in movies and TV. And
Did Al Hoffman write with other people?
yeah, did he? Oh, they all did. Yes, of course. They weren't permanent. Yes, we're not in the territory of Rodgers and Hart and Rodgers and Hammerstein, or there are many other, shall we say, more permanent couples of creative people. I'll just add in passing, one of them was a guy called Jay Livingston, who worked with Ray Evans. and they wrote some great musicals together. And I'll just say for people watching this out there, my dad has consistently been confused Jerry with
Yes,
Jay.
yes,
and
yes.
and he would laugh that there was a time when they both were working at Paramount, probably on TV things or whatever, and their mail would interchange, and it was very confusing. But no, my dad did not write Que Sera, Sera, as some people would say, and other things. That was Jay and Ray. Now that I think of it, they had a nice euphonious thing. So let's see, Mersey Notes. And the story on that one, I mean, actually, these are the kind of guys who on their own would tap out, would be writing lyrics, and dad would maybe, I'm sure, would play with tunes on his own also. And then they would get together and say, is there a match here? And what do you got? What do you got? And it would be, that was the life of songwriting in the 20s, 30s, 40s. It really sounds adventurous. And but this was this was the way these people made a living, and they had to really sell those songs, and they had to hope for a hit. And Dad was lucky to have a few of these hits in the very beginning of his career, like The Talk of the Town and several others. And so we're now in the war, the good war, and it's in the mid 40s. You know, it's going back and forth as far as battlefields go. So people needed a morale booster. I mean, you always need that in wartime. And it would be, you know, winning a battle would be one form of that. But music could play a role also. And by the way, I'll say as a side thing that the military forces would, do you know, would often stage their own musicals
Yes.
because they had talent that they drafted. And
And Irving Berlin and Frank Lesser
yeah,
were
I
in
mean,
the army, and they,
Berlin wrote for one of them, didn't he? I think I think God Bless America came out of that experience, putting on one of these shows and then they would tour Europe with them, with the cast. Uh, so that's the era, and the story um, is that you know, when something becomes a hit, everybody claims to be a part of it. Uh, but in this case, the lyric writers, you know, Al and Hoffman and Mac David, they were part of the team, and Dad did the tunes as always. And I think so. Sometime when I got in my adult life very interested in these things, there were all sorts of origin stories of those crazy words. Mary's eat oats, what is this? And you know, the chorus of the song explains what the words mean.
right,
Mares eat oats is mares eat oats, and so on. And so it's almost like the Navajo language that they used to fool the Germans. Uh, and but so these are slurred words put together, and there's a word for that, and I can't remember. It's a long, complicated English word for that process of putting actual words, slurring them into one phrase of some kind. And Rosie Dotes is a classic example, dozy dotes, that kind of thing. And so where did they get that? You say, well, I got hold of well, let me think a second. No, it wasn't. Mac was not part of that. Al Hoffman was part of that, and oh, damn it. There was a third songwriter who I got to know well. What is wrong? The memory disappears. It'll come. And I called this guy. They all lived in New York at the time, and it said, can we get together? I was somewhere else, but I would drive in, and we had lunch together. And I said, I want you to tell me, because this guy had claimed that he was the origin of these words. Now, newspaper articles of the times of the time would go for the story that look at me, this guy heard those words being hummed around the house, those sung around the house by his daughter, and because that's a nice story. And I have somewhere a photo was taken of me and the daughter sitting at a piano pretending to be, singing over the song. And possible, but too good to be true, maybe. Where would a kid come up with that off the bat? And so this lyric guy, I can't believe I can't remember his name. Because he was an important part of our lives, along with Mac David. And so he said, no, that's a story the papers made up because it was so cute. And he said when he was growing up and raised, his parents had an English nanny, and she would be singing or humming words to this effect. I mean, her own tune, I presume, and Mary Doe, something like Mary Doe, and it stuck in his head. And at some point, when he became a professional, now we're back to the 40s. He wrote them down, maybe some other things. Took them to Al, took them to Dad, and they said, "I think we can do something with this." Yeah. And so he claims that was the derivation. Now I'll just end this little scenario with it got really funny and interesting because once the song, it became a huge hit. As usual, nobody knew. It's one of those stories like with many famous novels, right? Rejected by every publisher. This is too crazy. Who's gonna say Mary Doe? Who cares? Yeah. Well, they eventually found a big publisher in the Brill who said, "Okay, we'll try it." So they issued sheet music. It was picked up by a famous band in New York that was also like Spike Jones, but a different model. It was a band that kidded around with music.
K Kaiser, was it K Kaiser?
No, that too. I'm sorry, I don't have a list here. I'll try to mention again. It's something that will come back. And this band, this is made for us. And they were playing at the Drake Hotel, which is a big deal in New York. And it's the kind of band where the trombonist would, fool around and dash at the audience, and maybe somebody would drop his pants. So they did whatever the audience would laugh at. Now, this is a period when the guys on leave, there were many in New York, would head for shows like this, just to have a good time. And the story Dad says is he and I don't know if Al was it, but he and the other lyric writer were walking. They wanted to go see how this band was doing their song, and I just love this. And he said they were walking up Broadway or something to get to the Drake, and they saw streams of guys in uniform coming out of the hotel, walking down the street, singing their song, and they started running. They started walking faster. What is going on here? And that place was going crazy over this tune in the song. And I don't know, they said, "Oh, we got," so I don't know who, I think within a day or a week, the publisher started grinding out a lot more copies of sheet music, and it was recorded right away. Don't ask me who. I think it was a trio who did this. Or maybe that was Perry Como. Let me see. Well, I can't get back to it. But anyway, it was recorded quickly, and I think it was Perry Como. And then other groups took it up right away, and it's become, as we say now, covered by many other things through the years.
Recent times, I think the last couple of years, probably somebody has recorded it.
There's always somebody. No, I can't think of the most recent one. And it may be that it's finally running its course after 60, 70 years. It's, there were many times in my life when somebody, I don't know, would at a casual conversation, "Oh, your dad wrote music." Well, my mom always sang that to me at bedtime. And so a lot of older, our generation and back, remember the tune that way. And it's become so identified as a song just somebody pulled out of the air that there were some singers who assumed it was a folk song,
Mm.
and therefore, as you know, under copyright law, anonymous was the writer, and so it's in the public domain. And I would find one or two of them, and I would say, I would write letters, usually trying to be kind about it, not a cease and desist. If the song is already out, I'd say, the next time you do this, you have to give credit to the songwriters. And so it became in that way literally iconic. Just like, I don't know, Daisy, Daisy, and people just assumed it was always there. But now scholars got it. They were having fun with this when the song came out, and there grew a self-mocking field called Merseydotiology. and you know, English scholars and all, they would actually try to track down, were some of these words part of English folklore, or I don't know, top hit of 1730, and one of them did actually write an academic article tracing down that he said, yes, he could find references to Mersey, show. It wasn't exact. The way the tune starts, dozy dotes, smiley dotes. I don't know about Little Lambsy Divey, but might have been in sort of paraphrases of those kind of words have been there for some time period in English culture way back, and somehow lasted through, and then were brought to America possibly by the immigrants who settled in the Midwest and around Appalachia, where we got a lot of folk songs from England and Scotland, made the voyage over with them. So in this case, these phrases, it's more believable that a woman from England would have picked this up in her childhood in England and brought them to her nanny job in America. So I like that story. But you know, what they did is expand on the words and gave them meaning, and this tune that Dad came up with, and this is one of his talents. There are others like this. It was easy to sing, bright and cheery. Da, 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 da. You can't forget it. And it became what we would now call an earworm, right? Once it's in your head, it never leaves.
Right.
And he's got some others like that. Bibbidi bobbidi boo. there was Disney's payoff of hiring these guys who knew he could write silly tunes. And actually, I'm going to show you one of my show and tells. That lest we forget, in terms of writing movie songs, because Cinderella was probably his great catch, and he did very well with that. I mean, I think professionally that is one of the best movie musicals around. Every song there has something to do with, you know, the characterization, moving the plot, all the things you're supposed to do in musicals. And in any case, for that year, I'll say, though he did write many songs for other movies besides Martin and Lewis, just, you know, other films, he had 3 nominations for an Oscar for, you know, best movie song of the year, or whatever they called it. And unfortunately, he never won. I can't show you the Oscar, but most people don't know. There's no reason you should know. Would you like to see what a nomination? They do give you something, and is this plaque? It's a certificate for being nominated for Outstanding Award of Merit for Academy Award of Merit for Outstanding Achievement, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, from Cinderella. So that's what we got. And I'm proud of it, and I have it hanging up in my office here somewhere. And his 2 other awards, you probably don't know. There's a movie called The Hanging Tree, and it was a kind of Western.
Gary Cooper movie.
I think so, and he wrote the theme song, "The Hanging Tree," da, da, da. And it said, "Whether you live, you got to be a brave man." But the third one that I really like, and Lee Marvin. Does anybody remember him? Who was really great at playing goofy cowboy Western movies and other stuff. And the movie was Hold on. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The movie was called Cat Ballou,
Yes.
Ballou, and it starred him and a very young. This is embarrassing. Senioritis strikes again. Um,
Jane,
the
Jane Fonda was in it. Jane
woman
Fonda.
who became
Jane Fonda was the female.
Jane Fonda. Thank you for that. A quick look at the your memory is better than mine, or you've got a phone handy. Jane Fonda. Oh, she was really, really lovely, and she acted well. So she was the love interest for Lee Marvin, always falling off his horse, and she, I think she got to sing, and this song. So they wrote this song, "The Ballad of Cat Ballou," and that got nominated also. So three strikes at the brass, but then could never quite get there. But still, most songwriters don't have that.
Just a matter of luck as to what movies are opposite you. You could have written the same song a year later and you would have won.
Yeah, it's uh, oh, let me see. So we're we're doing great stories from the Livingston Family album. I'll just also say in passing, in terms of the prejudices of the time, as we all know, and continuing to this day, uh, he wasn't born Livingston. Uh, his family name is Levinson, an obvious Jewish name. And when why did he change? When he was getting ready to start his big band, uh, I don't know, he was talking to a lot of people about that and how do I do and how do I get on the radio stations? And what he told me, and this is all my information is secondhand, is he was advised, uh, no, Jerry Levinson and his big band and the Talk of the Town, that won't work. And they said, because that name sounds funny. Well, what they meant was too Jewish. And so he switched to an English respectable sounding version of that. What I never understood is why he officially changed his name. I mean, he could have, people were taking on stage names all the time, like my mom, but he made it official. And I never thought to ask him how his parents felt about that. But apparently nobody objected, and he was on his way.
What about the other Livingstons, the Al and Jay? Are they,
Uh, yes, how about that? The other ones
you don't know
that's right.
how,
Oh, were they also a name
did they
change?
have Livingston or were they something like Living?
Well, a lot of those things happened, of course, when their parents immigrated, and the names are often altered on Ellis Island by the customs.
We'll call you Livingston.
Or yeah, your name is, they can't pronounce some Polish or Eastern Europe. I mean, Irving Berlin's family went through that. He wasn't born in Berlin. It was something akin to that in another language, and many of them had that experience. Same with Gershwin, and on and on. But in this case, it didn't happen in Ellis Island. They stayed. I don't know if Levinson was actually part of the roots of our family name, but it stayed that way until Dad, you know, easily grasped the handwriting on the wall and said, "Okay, I don't care about tradition here. I want to make it as a big band leader, and this is what I have to do. Okay." And that's it. There have been times in my life when I was younger when I was thinking about changing it back, uh, because why not? But I was used to Livingston and just never did. So there's a little side story of American culture. Um, and so I don't know, are we, where are we oh, so in his career, I should mention for people that all this time he's writing these great songs. Uh, among others, let's see, besides Living Valley Chihuahua Chihuahua, Blue and Sentimental was another early hit. And all of these, Fuzzy Wuzzy Has No Hair, another novelty tune, right? That people grew up with. He wrote I'm Just a Jitterbug, that was a hit in its day. And
Is there a Jerry Livingston songbook? Is there a
how could I not
songbook
mention?
published?
That's what I'm reading from. And let us not forget to mention one of his last hits in the 50s was The 12th of Never. Great song sung by Johnny Mathis. And
He
a
wrote that for
lot
Johnny
of his,
Mathis.
did I get to meet?
He
You
wrote
say?
it for him.
Oh, for him? I don't think so. But I suppose it's possible. But he picked it up. It's a lovely tune, and the lyrics are terrific. In this case, by another partner, Paul Webster, who did write the words for Que Sera, and worked with a lot of top composers of the time. And Paul was very articulate writer. And you think that the lyrics to The 12th of Never, I will love you, The 12th of Never, and that's a long time. It gives you chills. And this was a love song, not a breakup song. And not only that, but the couple is already together and they're going to be together. And it's for a lot of people, it's their favorite song that gets done a lot at weddings. And what did I want to
He,
say about?
he also wrote Secret Love. That was a big one.
Yes, he did. Right. Paul wrote a lot of great words to find movie
But his
songs.
Broadway show, the one Broadway show, did not go over well, though I think it's a wonderful score. It's Christine with Maureen O'Hara.
Well,
People didn't care for the story because
so we can get
Maureen O'Hara goes, her
let's
daughter
say,
has gotten married, and her daughter has died in India, married to an Indian doctor, and
I
she
see.
goes to India, and she falls in love with her daughter's husband. And that
Whoops.
probably was not incest, but it's a
Not
neighbor
exactly.
incest.
No. Woody Allen move. But I'll just say for people, so in time, I thought a lot of dad songs, they've never been collected into a songbook. That's not right. So I got in touch with Warner Brothers, who it's not because they had a lot of these kinds of things. And sort of series, the best songs of. And so I said, you guys ought to put together. Yeah, my dad, he's well known. And they did. And I gave them a list that I thought which ought to be in it. And they carried through. So here is, and there's a nice picture of young Jerry on the front. Again, handsome dude. Was in the 30s and his 30s. And there it is. The best, the songs of Jerry Lewis.
So
And
that's
they highlight
currently available. Is that
at what?
currently available? If one looked for it,
This has been available for decades. It may be out of print. Let me see. It was published in 1996. It may be available on Amazon. I don't know, but it's probably not in print at this point. But it's really so
not at worst at a premium price. I would think that nothing like that.
Might have to search for it, but it's great because I put some of these photos in here from our family. There he is as one of his early bands as a kid, and there's the accordion on top of the page. I started tracing it through, and here it is again. It's a lovely instrument. Whoops. But at some point he gave it up. Piano is my instrument. I can't do both, and it looks like something you don't want to lug around forever. But yeah. Well, anyway, so there's the songbook.
So
That's anything
let's
else I
get
can.
on to his Broadway show, which of course is very interesting to me because I'm so involved in that.
Right. So let's get to that. Wait, I just have to honor mom one other way. There's a great picture of Ruth Brent. One of the very few I have of a photo of hers. As it's a double image. Uh, you can see how cute and lively she is on this thing. And she put herself really into it. And as you can tell, I wish she had gone on with something. But anyway, so Molly, I guess you and I will have to fill in the background. There may be many people watching this who never heard of, God forbid, never heard of Molly Goldberg or Molly Berg.
But everybody knows the Gertrude Berg and the
Richard Berg,
radio show
sorry,
and the
Gertrude.
television show. Those are
I mean,
quite
again,
popular.
the brain is going crazy. Yes, that's right. It's Gertrude Berg who wrote the character and the persona of Molly Goldberg. Where did she get that? And Gertrude Berg, like Lucille Ball, I always maybe a crazy comparison, but not this way. They were both astute business people, and as well as fine, actors of their different genres. And Gertrude Berg was the same way. She was, from what I read about her, a kind of a force in the industry. I think there's at least one or two books out about her and her own bio. And she came up with this idea. Well, mind you, we're back in the 30s of creating a Jewish family that would be part of the weekly radio broadcasts that were so common at the times. I was always listening to the Lone Ranger and those things, but radio shows, radio dramas, comedies, dramas, whatever was a very popular medium. Darn, it should come back. But so she worked on this and created a family, a Ma and Pa Goldberg. I think they had a daughter and a son, right? The appropriate American mix. And then they had various uncles and cousins and hangers on. And out of this, she got a run of many years. I think she wrote all the scripts. And then she was astute to see by the 50s, it had a long run on radio, but the medium was moving to TV. And so then there was a TV show of the Goldbergs. But among other things, she was, I think, the first, I mean, this is kind of revolutionary for that period and that time, to portray a Jewish family lovingly, no stereotypes, and make rituals and acts of Judaism part of the show. I remember one of her famous shows was them celebrating a Sabbath, a Friday night. And, this had never been done on TV. And so people got to learn something about that way of life. And so, as you say, I admire her career greatly. And so, so that has its run. And so now we advance a few years or into the mid-late 60s, I think. And I don't know where the idea came from. I don't think it was from my dad, or one of his partners, that maybe
I
it's
think it
time
was
for
Leonard Adelson, and he was
Lenny.
involved in a lot of movies. I'm
That's
guessing
right.
your dad wrote some music, title songs.
Yeah, with him.
He has he has 10 or 15 movies I recognize.
Yeah, you're doing better than me.
I'm guessing he said to your dad, what about a
may have
Broadway
been him.
musical? Eventually, I think your dad is going to say, I don't write Broadway musicals.
Well, yes, let's do a musical. Neither of them had written. My dad had no experience. It's a pity he didn't go to more to pick up like what a musical is supposed to do. And but Adelson was really good. I got to know him and his wife too. He's a wonderful man who unfortunately died too young before the musical was finished. But he wrote very witty, sophisticated songs with lyrics, and Dad the tune. So they got together on this, and I guess whoever had the idea to say, let's put on an episode, like would be an episode of the Goldbergs as a musical, original, not one of their pre-written scripts. So they did that. I think Adelson co-wrote the script with another guy whose name is vanishing into my head. And it was an interesting story. They said
He
it
wrote the lyrics in the beginning. He wrote all the lyrics, but then when it was
well, then he died, unfortunately. Yeah, he
right,
wrote all the lyrics. Dad wrote the songs. There were some great songs in there. Of course, in every musical, it's a cut and paste job. As it as it develops, some are left out, some are added, some are switched around. Maybe they change a key to fit a singer. But in any case, well, then they had to get. I mean, before they could do any of this, they had to get permission, of course. And they went to the Goldberg estate, and I think her husband was still alive, and he liked the idea, said, "Go ahead," or somebody said, "Go ahead," and so the way was clear. So that's when they started on the songs, and and the book was written. The book was written, and the songs fitted in. And then when Adelson died, before it was quite done, my dad got in touch again with his favorite lyric writer, Mac David, and or at least a guy he had worked with for many years, let's say. So they were comfortable with each other. So this is the drama of Broadway. uh, when you bring in somebody else, I mean, any of us may have been the same way. And Max said, "Well, that's fine. I'd be glad to fill in. You know, you need some more songs, but you have to use my songs, and I'm going to add some that may replace some of Lenny Adelson's songs. May he rest in peace." And that happened. And so, in any case, so it was became a kind of jumble. I don't know if we want to dig into the weeds here, but even to the extent of changing the opening number, which and this is sort of the task of musical writing and the labor you go through. And there's nothing unusual with that. The Adelson had provided a very nice Jewish theme song. It was going to be a dance number to introduce the cast and their neighbors, and in which they would use the famous phrase, "Hello, Mrs. Goldberg," something like that. The neighbors would yell out there. So they lived in a tenement, the Goldbergs, I think in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and they were very near each other, those windows, and you could yell out, "Mrs. Goldberg," that was something like that. And so the song would be based around that, and it would root you in what you were going to hear. Max said, "No, let's have we'll have a song and dance number called the New Deal is on the way." Well, true in the setting of the time, but in my opinion, not
no,
really what this musical was about at
no, it's
all.
not about the New Deal. No.
It's not about the New Deal. It was about this family, like many, struggling to make it. And the New Deal gets mentioned, of course, in the show. Well, maybe this will help us. But the book that Allison wrote. But in any case, so those kinds of things. In short, it did. In short, it had short. It had a short run. I think after previews, maybe 60 shows. That's not too bad, but it's not thousands of shows. Like it was never a hit, and unfortunately, no Bruce Yecko came along to make a
Well,
cast.
I did record 3
Never
songs.
too late, though the cast is mostly not. It
This
did star.
Kay,
Yeah, it
Kay
came
Ballard
out.
came to me and
Ah,
she said, "I have a new CD." And I said, "What about, because they're just miscellaneous songs. What about adding songs from Aldi?" Because people said,
oh, it
"Well,
was you. Great. I should send you
yes,
a,
yes."
a gift for that.
So, and then the one song that Danny Fortis sang was such a time he had died.
Yes, that's right.
So
That was
Kay
sad too.
Ballard's show business lawyer, Mark Sendroff, loved to sing. And
Ah,
so he said, I'll sing. And he
don't sing that
had a
one.
very sweet voice. He was not a young boy. He did a very nice job. He still is,
Yes, it is. It is.
represents many actors today. When people are no longer there, he comes up with new actors. I'm sure he probably has Idina Menzel or Katie Hoffman or somebody that is new to the business
Girl.
because he's a really good lawyer.
Oh, I see. So good. Well, they needed all of that in the end.
Uh,
But no, it's good that he was part of
we just
Case
have
Western.
piano. We just have a piano
That's
because
right.
there's no possibility of getting instruments or things like that. But
Yeah.
the,
So
see, I
I'm
think
glad that.
my take on it is that first they had a really bad initial director
Hmm.
who had owned Paul Aaron, who
Uh,
only had directed one little off-Broadway review. So he should not be put in charge of 30, 40 people. That's a
so
whole
yeah,
different story, right?
you know, you know all the dirt. That's right.
Right.
He didn't do a great job of it.
So he was fired. I'm sure everyone connected to the show. What do we need to do? Get rid of that director. I'm sure there's a vote. Nobody wanted Paul Aaron to be the director, but I don't know who decided. Somebody
But
they
that
said,
point,
huh?
when this guy stepped in, what's
Well,
his name?
Alan Arkin.
Yes, no, but I mean, he was a friend of. Um, there was a guy who took an interest. He went to at least one of the Molly 63 shows and liked the idea of it, even if not the way it was presented. And so he said, You need a better director." And Arkin came in at some stage of the pro. I don't know if at the very beginning, maybe after previews, that
Oh,
would have been
in
ideal.
Boston. I saw it in Boston. It was Paul
Boston,
that
that's
went
right.
to the first preview.
So
So
I
that's
got
still,
excited. I heard, oh, Arkin is going to direct this, but again, a man, a great
he,
actor. Oh,
he was a good actor, but again, he too had no experience in doing musicals. I think they said, "Is Paul Aaron still
yeah,
around?"
right. These I was available. I mean, it would be the same, but it was all the it went through a lot of struggles, and so
And they had a
a
very
lot of
inexperienced producer, the lead
inexperience and
producer.
other things.
And
He
if he
was
had,
okay. They had good
he had a
actors. Oh,
he had a Don Saxon had a pizza shop in the 40s, and
that one.
I said, "You're really, he was literally there making the pizza and serving the pizza." I said, "You produced this Broadway show?" But he had other people. I don't think he had to sell a lot of pizza to, even in those
Learn, right.
1970, I'm guessing it's 400,000, 500,000, something like that. So that's too much pizza for one guy. But
Too
he had
much
other
pizza.
producers. But again, they had no background, so I think they just were talked into it.
Right, who knows? And it's just that, oh, this will be a lark. I mean, I had no contact with those guys, but and in fact took little interest in that period of my life. What my dad was doing. Oh, you're writing a musical? How nice! Let me know when it opens. And basically, should I say, my dad said, by the way, don't come. He knew it was headed for no glory there, but the
And
cast did
did
its
you
best.
not see it in New York? Did you not see it in New York?
No,
You didn't.
uh, I know. I thought I should have gone no matter what he said, but I don't know.
And
I don't
where
know
were
what I
you
was
living?
doing.
Because you're now in Boston, but I'm guessing you weren't in Boston when it was trying out.
Let's see, the early 70s. My early life. Maybe for 2 minutes we can get to that. Some of that is relevant here. Is Was as an academic. I had a degree in political science and was teaching around the country. Let's see, in 70, it opened in 72, I think. And
Oh,
did it,
70, 70.
yeah, somewhere in there, I wasn't that far away. I was transferring from Case Western Reserve in Cleveland to Rensselaer Polytechnic in Troy, Upper New York. I could have easily gone from either of those places, but I didn't. And I guess my head was in another position. backwards. But they tried. It was a big disappointment. Of course, money was lost. And the shame of it is that there wasn't a cast recording to at least become a cult hit, like sometimes happens. But I'm glad that you had Ballard at least record 4 of these songs, including 2 lovely ones that were taken out of the show when the new guy came along.
This was Kay Ballard. Kay Ballard said, I want to sing these songs.
I mean, lovely song. One called "The Kinder," in which would have given the show some gravitas, shall we say, in which the father is singing, Father Goldberg singing to his son, who's is sort of now growing up, has a girlfriend, is making move to maybe time to leave the parent, and they talk about that in the song. You know, the kinder, what happens to them? You raise them, and then they go their own way. Oh, and that was great. And wow, and other songs like that were really would have added a lot. So it's too bad. There were times when I did try to look around if there was any way to bring it back with a revised script and more of the Adelson songs put back, but it never worked out. So it's sitting there if anybody is watching who would like to take on a revival of Molly and a rewrite. That's that story. That was basically my dad's last foray into music making. Of course, by then, what was happening is in the 60s was the dawn of rock and roll and the Beatles and the era of the singer-songwriter. And that killed a lot of the
Did he literally write no other pop
work.
songs or movie songs?
Afterwards, no. See, this is just like I sometimes I just don't understand. I mean, Emily Dickinson was cool with writing, her poems secretly that nobody was publishing. So what? And they'd be discovered. And a lot of other people, didn't worry about, or they worried about, but if they didn't have a publisher, they went on working anyway. Not that, and not his. So I use the phrase. I saw a whole generation of those kinds of pop songwriters die on the vine. And my dad would say, his phrase would be, nobody is calling anymore, right? No movie person, no TV person, no publisher to say we'd like a song about, because that kind of music was over. As far as a continuing mainstream, there were people who always loved those older songs, and especially from the era of what we call the Great American Songbook. And Dad was part of that. And there was some terrific music. And for me, it's the era, it's as much American classical music as anything else, those older songs. And people still, thank God, license them for ads. And sometimes Mairzy Doats has worked its way into a few movies as a counter to what you're seeing on the screens. Usually some killing is going on, or somebody's movie called, was it The Cell or something, where somebody's trying to kill somebody else, and he's humming Mairzy Doats and Doggy Dogs. And Woody Allen used it in one movie, the guy running down the street with a hatchet. That was a funny scene. And so they use it that way. And sometimes my work is to get these songs still promoted, because they're still should be covered, at least the greatest of them.
Is Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo ever used in anything?
Well, Disney has used it in some of their promotions and ads. But now we have to dig for 2 seconds into copyright law. When Dad and his 2 lyric writers were hired by Disney as employees. So this is the term for this is work for hire, and it's your boss who owns the copyrights. So they do with Bibbidi and those other great songs, whatever they include them wherever they like, and they do in some of their promotions.
You can't take them. You can't take them and put it in something that Disney does not want them in.
I can't what?
That you can't put them in another movie that Disney doesn't approve of.
that I can't. No, they
It
have
is,
total control.
right.
Unfortunately, Mac, who was a shrewd dealer, they did get a contract. I know, should I say, out of Disney, which they did get some. I mean, besides their salaries, they get a small slice of the Disney revenues
Yeah.
from whenever Cinderella is played. However, in the theme parks or whatever, and it's nice to have that. But nowadays, I'll just say, of course, in the post-Disney world, and the company has hired renowned songwriters, of our era. And these guys have the clout to say, I keep the copyrights, or whoever the team
Still,
is.
it's not as good as being on your own, believe me.
Yeah, yeah.
You have,
But it
you
was a
have
great,
fame and but not as much fortune as if you were not working for Disney.
yeah, it's okay. But we do have some revenue from that. And, but we
Have
have
they
to
ever
realize
produced Cinderella, sort
what
of
is made
a
is
cab
being,
version?
uh,
Have they
uh,
ever done a Cinderella at one of the Disney parks? Sort of a 45
done it.
minutes?
Uh, well, of course you have. I mean, one of the main features is Cinderella's castle. Uh, when you walk in
When there's the
it's been
music
decades,
playing. I just
and
remember it's a small world. You go through a ride
no,
and you
that's
keep
got nothing to
repeating
do.
it's a small world.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Right. I'm sure they play the tunes in the castle and elsewhere. And we will have to mention in passing, those of you watching this who are thinking of that you like to write songs and you'd like to make some earnings off of it, we do have another group. We songwriters do have a group that was founded in the early 20th century after a big push by the major writers of that time, like Berlin and Gershwin and others. Uh, who the story is one day, this is another origin mythical story, maybe, but they went into a restaurant in New York and they hear their songs being played, either by a band or maybe through a radio at that point. And they look at each other and say, why are we not getting anything from this? I mean, the restaurant is using our tunes to help its business. Light bulb goes off. We need an organization. And the short of it is they have found what became known as ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers of Music, it's understood.
This is Victor
And
Herbert and the Delmonicos or something like that, where they met.
probably places like that. And it took many years for this to come into effect, for Congress to pass the laws that allowed this, and there are other groups like this now too, to help songwriters collect royalties from use of their music. And that's the game, and that's where a lot of the royalties are now. So that at least larger restaurants, I mean, smaller, I'll just say in passing, because restaurants never like this, of course. And our lines as songwriters or inheritors of songs is basically, well, you pay the electrician, don't you? And you pay where you get your staff, and also why shouldn't you pay? You're using this our case. Then I'm speaking to an audience of millions here through your what you're going to do with this on YouTube is that these songs have contributed to American culture, and not least is why you hear them in often in restaurants, even to this day, especially if sung by Sinatra, and some of my dad's songs were, and people of that, singers of that ilk, because they help the ambience of your atmosphere. Why else would you use them? Uh, and most of the time they're playing more, current music, pop, rap, whatever. But you'll hear sometimes, I'll jump to attention when I sometimes will hear the 12 to Never or something like that coming over the speakers in the restaurant. Say, okay, there it is. um,
Sometimes in
and yeah, what's good
elevators.
about that was,
Sometimes they're played in elevators and in walls as
well,
you're
of course,
walking around.
this now, and ASCAP over the decades says that yes, we have a nice thing going, but deservingly so for these through the life of the copyright. Um, and there are limits on those. Congress keeps extending them, but that may end. And yeah, so now whenever you hear music, that's right, in a play, that's not original to the play, in a movie, certainly that has to be licensed, in anywhere, in a stadium, uh, in an ad where that's where the big money is, and for license, you license these songs, and in restaurants they license a music service who provides them, and so I mean that's how it works. It's music, and at least in the Western world, is everywhere you go. If you didn't write it, then you have to pay a reasonable fee to use it. Um, so that's the the business side of how people earn their keep these days. I mean, I do if I can say a minute or so about the fact that I turned songwriter too. It was my midlife crisis in my mid-50s, and when these things happen, the guys and gals growing up and saying, I had left the academic world, I had done other work and other jobs, but music was always my passion, but more as a performer on flute is my main instrument. I play piano, but not well enough to perform on it. But I decided, okay, I write well, and why don't I try this game? And so if I did, and I have to this day, but I then went through, like, the intellectual I am. Did some research. The first thing they tell you is, in any kind of book writing or songwriting, who's your audience? Well, you should basically know who you're writing for, and either adapt to that audience's expectations or go your own way knowingly. And I decided, with the kind of writing I was doing, is, had done an academic, I know I write well. And it's I discovered this weird genre called cabaret, which of course was all that music was in the 30s and 40s, when it was played in restaurants and clubs all around big cities everywhere in the country, and Europe and around the world. And it was a genre of sophisticated music, and witty lyrics. I mean, my God, Cole Porter and the masters of that would write great tunes. And I said, that's for me. And I'm going to write music of our time, but trying to echo that style in my way. So I started doing that. I mean, I was lucky that I didn't have to make a living at it, because there isn't any in that field, even for the singers, unless they're the really top of their profession. And it's hard. Most of the cabaret singers and songwriters have, gig jobs, other ways to survive. And when I decided to do this, I'm not prolific. I work hard at these things and turn out several, in those times, several every year at least. But in any case, that was fun for me. And so I too now have a catalog of 30 or 40 songs, and wrote a children's musical about dinosaurs that actually played as I wanted it to in several museums. Museums have theaters too, by the way, some of them. And they put on shows. So I thought, this is a way in. But then I wrote mostly for cabaret singers, and that led to many fun trips to New York to meet them. You have to get out there and make them know you're alive and what you're doing, and market them, which was always a drag, but you have to do that too. And eventually I put on a review of my music called "The Stories in My Mind," because the title of one of my songs, and because I tend to write story songs to follow, again, some of the patterns of the past. And that got recorded live at a club in New York where it had a short run, and that is in print and still in sale here and there on sites like Bandcamp and others of that ilk.
I intend to put it on my Footlight site, so that might.
Yeah, and yes, and Bruce, yes, she's going to. I'm glad you will. And that is terrific.
They should definitely go to your website to see and hear a lot of stuff from.
Yeah. So, final plug: if anybody's interested, you can hear my versions of contemporary songs that are I hope, witty and sophisticated and funny often.
They
Uh,
are. Bruce
yeah,
Yanko recommends this.
we have Bruce Yego saying you should listen, at least listen. You can go to Bandcamp and hear them free, or you can go to my site, at least for a few spins. Then they say, are you intending to actually download something? But in my site, you can hear them
And you will also
full,
supply
not
music.
10-second clips, but the whole songs for free. DennisLivingston.com. Easy as that. And you can also read a lot of the stories we've talked about here about my dad. Of course, I set aside a page for him on this website, and to tell a lot of the stories of that we've been discussing here about how he started, what his music was like, about Mali and its travails, and also for you collectors and archivists and just people who like the old stuff. I've got a whole bunch of images of sheet music, original copies of when they were first put out of some of his best known songs, like There's the Oats and Others, 12th is Never. All of them in the old days had photos, images of the singer who was doing them or the band leader who was doing them on the cover, or nice little designs of sorts. I've got a lot of that there. And certainly I've got some recordings of his music also on the website that you can hear. Some of them, I think, from the original recordings or covers later on. And also I had another review in the at the end of the 20th century, that far back, that I called from so clever. So from Silicon Valley to Tin Pan Alley, and which I saw later, wide exact phrase on a bus or some ad for some phone company. And no, I thought of it first, but you can't copyright a title, by the way. And so somebody, that smart guy picked up. But anyway, I thought that was good. And what that review was, I thought, great idea. Dad was songs, I have songs. Let's see what happens if we will put them, a review of two generations of songwriters. And that went over, and that was done here in Cambridge, Mass. And that had a nice short run too. It wasn't meant to go on for a long period, but it would be nice to bring it back sometime. Any producers out there, and because it was a good idea, and people had a good time listening to the atmosphere, because the styles of the songs, of course, have differed greatly over the years, from his generation to ours. And so we had fun with it. And I even included, and as I planned to from the start, one of Grandpa Sam's songs. I had the sheet music, and I picked out one I thought they would like, and I just so love saying to the audience, and now, probably, undoubtedly, for the first time in 90 years, you are about to hear a song written by Sam Levinson. Not the comedian, my grandfather, if anybody remembers that Sam. And so so that's also, you can hear. I took some of those, and that was, at least we made a live recording, but never a CD. What's wrong with me? And that I plucked out some of Dad's songs there, so you could hear how it was done by some contemporary singers who were very good at interpreting him. And in fact, I'll just finish with Dad. For his 100th birthday, it occurred to me, really, somebody should notice this and put on a review in New York, and one director did. So that had a nice run of his 100th anniversary song. So that's him, that's me. I picked up this song, and it's really became a passion for me, like it did for him. Fortunately, I can be more casual about it, and I've also, I got a taste of what it must have been like, at least before he was famous. You really have to chase after the singers. I mean, if you're not known, then how do they know that you're writing stuff? I mean, I have a great website that had, as each song was written, I would make a studio recording with a fine guy who also played accompaniment, bring in a singer, from the Boston cabaret scene. We have a lot of fine ones. And so those are the recordings that you'll hear at DennisLivingston.com if you choose to go there and hear what some of my work is like. You're hearing Boston singers mostly, and this pianist, Doug Hammer, and who is very fine. So it's, well, boy, what work it takes.
You will also provide sheet music if somebody wants to sing a song, right?
That would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't, let me see. I mean, my dad's sheet music is still available here and there. And I do have what I can send. Okay, so I don't have like printed, official sheet music, but I knew, of course, if I want singers to do this and pianists to pick it up, excuse me, I better have something for them to read. And of course, I'll just say, as a songwriter, I'm very old-fashioned. First of all, I read music, which is not true a lot of some of the singer-songwriters today, maybe most of them, but it doesn't matter because they can sing it out and somebody can notate it. But I write out all my music, pencil on paper, no electronics yet. And usually because I find, although you can do that, there are plenty of great notation programs. And I do use Sibelius when I finish the song to do that. But I pencil and paper to write out because it's easier to erase something when you want to change it. Just, I don't want to bother with deleting things on a computer. And so I follow that. When the song I decide is finished, I take my time with it. Then I go to Sibelius, notate it carefully. And my songs also differ from a lot of, because my grounding is in classical music, though I don't write that. I'm never trained to write that stuff. For that matter, I was never trained to write any kind of music, but I'm thinking that maybe I picked up more from Dad than I realized, hearing him fiddle around at the piano at home. And I took a one-day songwriting lesson at Berklee College of Music here, famous school, and that was helpful. But I thought, I know everything he's saying. How the timing, the 4 bars, the 8 bars, bring back the chorus. Yeah, of course, that's what pop songs do. And so I followed that pattern for a while, and I said, well, you're allowed to break out of it too these days. But in any case, that's what you'll hear in my music, the standard style of a pop song. And what was I trying to say? So what is available indeed for free, he says again, is if you want to get a printout, a PDF file, rather, not a printout, you print it out. I'd be glad to send anybody who wants to see the sheet music for my songs. And they are written, I was told after the fact, though I don't write classical music, they look like it, because I'm one of those, I guess, minority of songwriters today who actually writes out not just the singer's line, which is what a sheet music or a lead sheet would always have, just the basic tune, but the chords, great detail, the chords, as if I'm writing, a Brahms tune or something, or, Schumann or one of those cats. In a way, I'm writing art music. I realize that after a while, that's a genre within the classical realm, but as a pop song, and where you're going to understand the singer singing the lyrics, unlike in the classical music where they're all over the map. And so, and I remember, I'll never forget, one pianist, and he said, as he was getting to learn my songs for the shows that singers do include in their shows, now and then, to quote a title, he said, "You're writing lieder." I said, "Oh, yeah, am I really?" That's the German word for art songs, the kind of songs that Schumann and those guys would write in the 19th century and still done in classical. In other words, fully written out. So what I always tell the pianist is, this is the way I'd like to hear it, but you are totally free, as all pop jazz pianists would be, to improvise stuff as you go along. If you see it would be useful, and that's fine. So we've collaborated to that extent, and sometimes I include their changes when I revise the music to put it online, and that's how it works how it's worked for me, and I've had a lot of fun with it. Uh, and hope to get back to that after a few years of giving myself a sabbatical in this field to develop my other input in the music world. Is that I unlike piano, I play flute very well, even though I've had no conservatory training, but all my life, I've developed my techniques, and I found, not in midlife, but earlier, just out of the blue, that I was very good at improvising music. So I do that now with groups of people when I can find them, uh, and sometimes, and I actually formed a band prior to COVID, and I was dissipated of five of us, and doing group improvs, which I thought at the start would be impossible. But I mean, if it's unless it's going to be chaotic, which a lot of improv is, but we were able to do that by listening carefully. It's do that in improvisational music. It's a good skill. What are the other guys doing? What are the riffs? Jazz does this all the time, and silence is important. I had to learn. You drop out sometimes and let somebody else take a riff along, and so I had a band they called The Alchemist. We considered partly because I'm a fantasy fan, and partly because we were doing alchemical things with sound in our way. And so there are 2 albums of that also at Bandcamp and for sale. Just look up The Alchemist and see what you get. If you're curious about group improvisation, that's pretty good. So that's my tale in the music business. And anything else you want to touch on, Bruce?
Well, I think we've had a very fascinating look at both your life and certainly your
Mm,
father's life and his
yeah.
father. It's an interesting life. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
it's too. When I build this review is from Silicon Valley, blah blah blah. It's 2 generations of songwriters. Me later in life, him from the beginning, and I don't think there are many. I offhand, you know, father is usually a guy with a son, usually a son, who follows in that footsteps eventually. But I'm one, and lo and behold, my son, we'll just give him a credit here while we're at it. Jonah Livingston kept the tribal name, and who's now in his late 30s. He has gone to the other end of the spectrum of my dad's field and some of what I'm doing by being a heavy metal drummer. And he's very good at that. And he's had a touring band for many years that again had to stop when COVID came, but has started a new one. And he would also be in his way writing. I mean, at first I thought, you guys, you have singers, they're just yelling at the audience. You can't understand a word. I would go to his shows when they came to Boston, but but I began to appreciate that medium too, because the best of these people, like our son's band, they work hard at these things. They're not just blasting out at you. They know what they're doing. And I saw him writing songs in a way. So, third generation. Even though you have to read the words to understand what they're getting at on their albums. So he's doing his thing, and
Does he have any children? Is there a
we'll
chance of?
see. Not yet, but we'll see what that happens. I keep telling him I should live long enough. I should be sentient by the time you guys. He's married, right? Anytime you guys have any kid at my age, which is more than it looks like, and so hurry up already. And we have to see if we can implant the seeds of future songwriter of who knows what.
You look to be in very good shape. I mean, you're my age, and you're looking about. They say I need a walker to get around, and I'm guessing you don't.
Yes, I'm still walking and talking, right, at
Driving
82.
a car, that's the key to drive a car.
Driving, yes, for now, yes, driving the car.
Yes, yes.
And it's I have to say that maybe music has something to do with that. I don't know if I have superior genes or whatever, but
You
when you
need to
have
be
passion,
active. You need to be active doing something.
You have to be
just sit
active. That's
around as
right.
a vegetable.
It doesn't have to be music. My wife is an artist and she's doing well too. I mean, all fields where she really does have to market. It's her profession. I can write whatever I want and see where it lands. But she works at it, and yes, when you're active, well, that's what all the science says. You keep your brain, those segels in the going, those neurons activated, and it has to have an effect. If you're a writer, same any field in which you're heavily involved, I suppose even programming of code. So that's how the world works, and I'm lucky that I, in some fashion, inherited this kind of active life in my case with music.
So, thank you very much. I hope people who watch this will pursue some of the possibilities of
Yeah,
hearing more, doing things. But
yes, we will stay in
at
touch.
least it will be on YouTube as soon as I believe in 2 weeks I'll learn how to put it up on YouTube myself. So that'll be a good thing. So,
Oh, do your things get up on YouTube? What it takes? Do you do editing and then put them together?
No, I don't. I don't know. I
Oh, you know,
don't. I edit out the beginning when it
right.
doesn't
Oh,
feel.
of course.
That I could do, but not. Somebody I interviewed somebody about film, and he had like
Yeah,
4 or 5 things. I said that's way beyond me. Why talk about this composer? I shouldn't have said that. No. I suggested, I said, let's just wait, 4 or 5 months and we'll do it over. And you can, because he
right.
didn't somehow understand when I said interview that I meant YouTube and all that. I mean, he did, but he didn't, what I mean? So
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, where I just
he had
like
a
to
lot
talk
of interesting
anyway.
things to say about film. I mean,
Right.
he's the background music and things like that. He's done many
Yeah.
interesting things. So hopefully,
No, or you would have to stop for 3 minutes and hear a song, which would be nice, but people can do that easily.
okay. Well, again, thank you very much, and
Okay.
we'll be in
Well,
touch
thanks.
in the real world too. I'll call you, or
That's
you
right.
call
We will
me,
be in
and
touch.
thank you very
Thanks
much.
for the, thanks for the chance of explaining the Livingston saga.
Thank you.
Bye bye.